Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Missing Frames Celebrating Superman series. I'm your host, Shawn Eastridge. Normally on Missing Frames, we watch all of the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives, but as you no doubt already know, I am a massive Superman fan, and I could not be more excited for James Gunn's new film, which is being released on July 11th. By the way, did you know tickets are on sale right now? If you did not know that, now you know. So go get them, and then once you do, come back and hang out with me. Anyway, I've been celebrating the new Superman film by interviewing some of my absolute favorite Superman people in the months, weeks, and days leading up to the film's release. I've got interviews with Mark Waid, Jason Aaron, Dan Jurgens. They're too many, but they're all easy to find. Just check out all the latest episodes of my podcast on whatever platform you do your podcasting. If you like what you're hearing, I encourage you to share with fellow members of the Super Fam. And you guys have already been so supportive. So many people have reached out. You guys have had such kind comments and have been so awesome. I really appreciate it. So in today's episode, I spoke with the Eisner Award-winning writer, Tom King. Yes, the Tom King. I've been looking forward to this conversation for such a long time. I'm a huge fan of Tom's ever since I stumbled on The Vision #1, literally a decade ago. Wow. Oh my God. Yeah. 2015 was 10 years ago. That's frightening. I need a moment. If you need to take a moment, please. But anyway, I fell absolutely in love with The Vision. I think it's one of the great comics of all time. Tom has since written Batman, Mr. Miracle. He's currently writing Wonder Woman, which is amazing. He also wrote what is my personal favorite Superman story, tied with For All Seasons and Mark Waid's Birthright, Superman Up in the Sky. Seriously, I'm so grateful to Tom for taking the time to hang out. He's a busy guy. He's writing no less than, let me see, according to my notes, he's writing no less than 5 billion comics at any given time. So I really appreciated him hanging out and being a part of the celebrations. Let's go ahead and celebrate Superman with Tom King.
Now available to own on video cassette.
I have to start off by thanking you on behalf of a fellow Instagrammer who posted a quote from your deluxe edition of Up in the Sky. I can't remember the quote. You remember the quote, right? You remember?
I do. I remember the quote. Yes.
Quote. You quote yourself constantly and remember verbatim, but
all I do is quote myself. As yes, even to my own family, I'm like, as I wrote. Oh my God, I'm gonna cough. Just wanted to warn you guys, it was coming.
No. By the way, this. I'll edit this and stuff. So anything like that.
Oh, this is fucking gold. You're missing out on me slowly choking to death on Coke Zero.
Well, now I'm not going to edit this.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be here. Superman's my favorite character, and I know we're going to talk mostly about films you haven't seen before you die. But
yes, that's it.
But I just my gratitude for being on here talking Superman it's so much fun. So thanks for having me. As I slowly choke to death.
This is also a snuff podcast. This is
good.
as I intended. The Coke Zero bottle I planted in your house is doing its job,
God.
And it is going to make for some compelling. My engagements and downloads are going to spike after this episode. They're like, who's he gonna have on the show now? What famous, amazing Superman writer? You know, I've celebrated Superman with a lot of amazing people, and now I'm really trying to find a way. You gotta hook the kids, Tom. You gotta hook them.
I think that's a hook. Like on every podcast, someone dies. Is Amy Poehler going to do that? No. You'll launch to the top immediately.
I appreciate your encouragement. That means a lot to me.
Just happy to go first.
I will give a shout out to my beautiful friend because I promised him I would. It's at Superman for All Reasons. He's been like reaching out to me and supporting this podcast. I appreciate it. And then he was very grateful to you for sharing his post to your story.
I hope he saw that I very much left his name in the post so that everyone would
Yes.
see it was from him, and did not want to rip him off. It was a very little beautiful little image he made, and I liked reposting it. So thank him for me.
I will do that. You can thank him right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, at Superman for All Reasons. Are you calling in now?
We're doing live calls.
I think we lost him. Yeah, our technology is not.
Is Tom really dying?
I think we lost him. This is basically the scene from Up in the Sky where Superman is trying to reach Lois via phone, but in podcast form, which I imagine is even more exciting and more dynamic for our listeners. Tell me about what's your first memory of Superman? Do you have like an early memory that you can recall where you're like, that's the first time I heard of this character, saw this character, or is it something that you just, like so many people, just have grown up knowing and you can't pinpoint that moment?
I mean, no, it's definitely, there are certain characters that I think you just know from birth, that are just in the culture. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, I think are probably the top 4 in comics. But I do have an early Superman memory that stays with me. I was I was 4 years old. My mother had moved the family to Boston. She was going back to law school, and it was me and my older brother, and we lived in this little apartment complex. And in the apartment next door was a girl my age, and they were Israeli. Then they had just moved to America, and they spoke not a lick of English. And they put the girl and I together. We were both about 4 years old, like as a play group, as like someone has to take care of us during the day while my mom is at school. And neither of us spoke each other's languages, and we would just kind of find ways to play and throw things at each other. And I remember I literally remember the first word that we shared, where I was like, "Here's a English word. I'm going to teach you an English word. Your first American word was the word Superman." I think it was in a book, and I was like, "This is Superman." She's like, "Superman." I was like, "Superman." She's like, "Superman." And
were you aware of who the character was, or was it just like, I love the word and
these memories are so foggy in my mind because you're 4 years old. Who knows what the actual reality of the memory is? But what I do remember is that like my mother was so proud of me. She's like, you taught. I forget. I think it was like Nettle or something. That's not a real name, but that's what your brain is telling me. You taught Nettle, who that's not her real name, a word today. I was like, I did. It was like Superman. She's saying it to everybody, you know. And now her parents are so excited.
It's the word. It's the only word you need to know.
And I was like, oh my God, how metaphorical is that of Superman uniting cultures and producing happiness in little children? It's something that I would write in a story and tear out and say it's too corny, but it's actually really definitely did happen to me.
So he's been with you for since you were 4 at least.
Been with me since I was 4, yes. And I remember my first Superman comic book very distinctly. It was John Byrne's Man of Steel #1. I was probably 7 or 8, so a little longer. And we moved back to Los Angeles, so I was growing up there. And I read it about 35,000 times. And then I lost it. I literally lost it somewhere in my house, and I was unable to. And it just lived as a dream of like, did I dream that? Did I remember I had the perfect, because that's a very good Superman comic for a little kid because it's very bright and blue and has an origin story that's not quite Superman's origin story. It's like, why is it different than what everybody's been telling me?
Yeah.
And I was like, did I just dream that? Was that other this? And then like years, and I would search the whole house looking for this goddamn comic book. And yes, I still remember the long search for Man of Steel #1.
Do you think, because this is what happened to me, do you think your parents might have hidden it from you because you were reading it too much?
Never occurred to me until just now.
Let me tell you why.
Oh my God.
Let me tell you why. Go ahead.
No, my mother's in the grave. I can't even ask. No one will know this to answer this goddamn question.
We may be having an emotional breakthrough here. Some childhood trauma.
I'm going out to the cemetery to yell at her gravestone.
So when I was about that age, 4 or 5, I was aware of who Superman was. I'd heard of him. My first memory is wearing one of those vinyl Superman outfits with the plastic mask that would break and cut you, and with
Sure,
with his face
yeah,
on
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I would run around the house, and my parents would sing the John Williams Superman theme, and it would embarrass me. I'd be like, "Stop singing that!" One of my other favorite memories, earliest memories of Superman, is there was a TV commercial for the broadcast of Superman the movie, the 1978 film, and they were showing clips, and they're like, tune in at 7 p.m. on ABC, and they showed the clip of Superman being pushed into the swimming pool by Lex Luthor with the kryptonite necklace. At the time, I didn't know what was happening. I just knew, like, well, Superman, as I understand it, is all powerful. He can fly, nothing can hurt him, and I was baffled by how he could be pushed into a swimming pool. So I asked my dad, what happened? Like, why didn't Superman fly away? And my dad, I guess, thought I wasn't ready to know the truth about the kryptonite necklace. So he just said, oh, he had a bad stomach ache. And as a 4-year-old, I remember thinking, that doesn't make any sense. Like, well, and it really, like, it created more problems, I think, for my development as a human being than if my dad had just said, oh, well, you see, son, it's a kryptonite necklace. That's Superman's one and only weakness. And Lex was able to push him into the pool. He decided, no, that's too much for my 4-year-old. I'm going to tell him it was a stomach ache.
See, I was thinking, I was like, oh man, I wonder if I could write a story where Superman gets sick and has something. And then, of course, my brain's like, no, Alan Moore already wrote that story. It's a Swamp Thing. And it's like real, and it's real good. It's like a classic.
It's that South Park episode where they the Simpsons did it.
Yeah. It was a total Simpsons did it moment.
Alan Moore did it.
I was all excited for 1 second. I was like, that'd be a good story. Superman just gets sick. Tell that story. It must be so weird for him. And then I'm like, oh my god, it's like one of the most famous Superman stories of all time. Good job.
You can still. I'd still like to see the Tom King Superman is sick story.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Keep that in the back burner.
I haven't ripped off Alan Moore enough. I just want more time. It'll be good.
So there was a point in my life where when I would be put down for a nap, I would sneak out of my room and go downstairs and watch Sesame Street. I developed an internal clock that I still have to this day, where I knew instinctively, like, all right, that block of time where it's Mr. Rogers' Sesame Street, I'm going to turn on the TV and watch all of these.
Sure.
And then at a certain point, I was like, we have taped copies of, like, my parents used to tape movies off television. I was like, we have Back to the Future, we have Return of the Jedi. There's got to be a Superman tape around here somewhere. So it became my mission during nap time to find the Superman tape. And then I finally found a copy of Superman 2 that they'd taped off a broadcast, and I watched it so much that my mom hid the tape from me, which brings me back to this. I think that is what happened to your Man of Steel #1.
This makes total sense to me, and also reminds me that I am also a Superman 2 guy, even though I think it's an inferior film to 1, in my opinion, as an older person. Because as a kid, I watched 2 and 3 maybe a billion times, and never watched 1. Yeah. I don't know why it just wasn't on the repeat play on Channel 9 or 13 or whatever that they show. Like,
you know what it is? It's the action. Superman 1 is a romantic cinematic love letter to Superman, and has the action is safe for Superman 2. So as a kid, I was like, Superman 2 is the one I want to watch because he punches the bad guy, he fights them in Metropolis, and it's exciting.
He loses his power for half the movie.
It's like I was realizing as I was thinking about it, I was like, it's also the most romantic one, because like he gives up his powers to be with Lois Lane. They spend the whole time like at Niagara Falls, and then they go to the fortress.
I totally thought he had super kissing powers. I thought that was
the cellophane S was the real.
I was
like, these are all normal. You're telling me there aren't real powers? But you do. I think one of the big coming of age moments in my life was realizing that Donner's film is the better film. Like, that was a big moment for me, a big breakthrough. Realizing, like, as a film fan, understanding why Donner's film was stronger. And then you learn the production history and everything, and you start to say, like, oh, okay, there are reasons why Superman 2 is like, it just doesn't feel as strong in certain ways, feels a little bit cheaper.
Superman might be my favorite superhero movie of all time, but I will say it's to me it's always 3 different movies. It's the first movie, which is the weird Krypton movie, which doesn't work at all.
You don't like that? I love it so much.
Oh my god, it's so awkward. And that's the part when you watch it. Do you have kids? When you watch that movie with your kids, you have to be like, okay, you just survive this, and then we'll get this
again, why you go to Superman 2? He's already Superman at the start. You don't have to sit through all the
you don't have to
Krypton
sit
stuff.
through Brando, and it's all so 1976 or whatever. It was just
you don't love the hula hoop prison.
Yeah, and the hula hoop. No, that stuff's cool, but it's all like it's so red, and the effects are so terrible, and it just looks like you can just see the grips off stage pushing the set around. It's like and Brando is like way over the top, and but I'm a huge Brando fan. And then there's
the planet Krypton.
The planet Krypton. And then there's the final third of the movie, which is the going around the Earth the other direction and all that stuff. And that movie's okay. But the middle movie, the one that's from the moment he arrives in Metropolis to like when Lex Luthor has like his third scene and you're kind of a little tired of, like, that movie is freaking perfect. It is an ideal movie. I love it. I think it's the most grounded superhero movie of all time. You feel like you're actually in I'm saying New York because it's Metropolis, but like that's why it works, because Superman's you always feel like you're actually there. You feel like you could, like, Superman's actually reaching out and could touch these people, and that Lois Lane is a real human being with faults and glories, and it's amazing. And then they're flying and saying poetry to each other, and you kind of like that.
I mean, all of this, if I'd never heard of this and never seen the movie, and you described all of this to me, it's like, what, Brando is in the movie and they sing poetry to each other? Like, this sounds like a perfect movie. You're like, can you read my mind? I guess.
No, don't get me wrong. I love all of it. I'm just saying the middle third is a perfect movie.
I agree that the middle section of the film is definitely the best section. However, I think the whole thing is masterful. Masterful cinema.
It's masterful. I'm not saying it's not masterful.
No. I want to bring it back to what you said, though, about the reality of it, the verisimilitude of it. I think that is what was so special about that movie, is at a time where comic books in general were not seen as something sophisticated, I guess I would say. They were not seen as something that were anything. It was like, it's kid stuff. It's you can toss it away. It's throwaway. It's not meaningful. I still am amazed that Richard Donner just had the foresight and the ability to look at the script he was handed and say, this is kind of a parody, and that's not Superman. Like, Superman is part of our culture, and this character means too much to too many people for us to just do a kind of jokey, campy version of this. Like, and then what he did is, that's exactly what he did. Superman the movie is nothing else if not, like, believable. I think that's why, even though I agree with you about the Krypton stuff, what I love about that section of the film is that it's planting the idea in your brain in that solemn, slow, it's saying, like, this is an epic. This is no fantasy. This is history. It happened. And I think that is, as I got older and understood that Donner, with his pacing, was kind of setting you up to look at it as like, oh, it's this mythical legend of this hero, before it kind of like then slams into modern, quote unquote, modern day 1970, late 70s. But like, then it becomes, oh, it's our world. We're in our world and stuff. But I think that was what was so brilliant about it. And I also really, really credit Donner with, frankly, saving not only Superman, but I think the comic book genre, which did not exist, the film genre didn't exist, but just comic books in general. I think he legitimized that character in a way where, can you imagine if that film had been like campy's 1960s Batman? I don't know if we'd be talking about Superman the same way today. I really think Donner's film was like the landmark make or break moment, where it was like, it could have skewed and been like the campy, not serious, it's kind of a joke, it's kind of kid stuff. And he came along and was like, let's make it a big epic love letter to this piece of American folklore.
I mean, it's a fantastic question. I don't think I completely disagree with you. I think you make a very good point, but I mean, you have to give it some context that Superman had already been a very successful TV show that wasn't
true.
That's not, and a very successful radio show. It had been a successful Broadway play, all three of which were not played for camp specifically, and that that time, Superman outsold Batman. Like it was still a cultural international phenomenon. The movie needed the IP on some level more than the IP needed the movie. And I think Superman would have still. I mean, he was already. I mean, that's the amazing thing about Superman is what he comes around in 1937. By 1939, he's in the Macy's Day Parade. Nothing is like
Right.
that. It took SpongeBob 20 years, like
Right.
like Bluey is kind of a similar phenomenon that happened pretty fast, but even that wasn't as fast as Superman.
Yeah.
On the other side of that coin would be that I think that movie was so good that it was followed with, you know, 3 movies after it, each of which were lesser in quality. I don't think that's controversial to say at all.
No.
And yet each of them we gave a chance because you were kind of looking for that high of the first movie.
Yeah. And you always had Christopher Reeve, like at the end of the day.
That was one of the greatest casting of all time. Just like you had the perfect man who looked, acted, and was that character. So yeah.
Do you remember the moment where you like actually kind of latched on to Superman? Was there a moment for you when you were like, this is why Superman is special to me and why he's my guy?
I was always, even among nerds, I was nerdy, and this is such of my generation. But like when I was growing up, I was super into comics. Just I was born and raised. So I spent my allowance on all the time. I looked at the world in terms of comic books, and I was much more of a Marvel zombie, which is ironic. I've been at DC for 10 years now, but I always read both of the companies, and everyone then was an X-Men fan. It was Chris Claremont, Jim Lee. Like that was the cool, like if you ever wanted to have a kid at school talk about a comic book, they'd be talking about a Jim Lee X-Men comic. And I was like, I like the Avengers, Captain America. Like I couldn't even go to the cool part of the nerd I was in. And this is very similar because I grew up, I was 9 or 10 when 89 hit. And that was a phenomenon. I mean, as a comic book fan, as a kid, and everyone's like, you suck. When I was a kid, when you were a comic book fan, everyone said you suck. Like, it was like, you're a comic book fan, you suck. That was like kind of one after another. And then all of a sudden, everyone at school was like, we're wearing Batman t-shirts, and Batman became the in thing. And like my older brother showing me Killing Joke, and people reading Dark, DKR, and they're like, man, dude, Batman's the baddest. And I think at that point, that's sort of, I don't like the X-Men, I like the Avengers. It was, in retrospect, it wasn't a nerd instinct. It was a rebellious instinct that is the least nerdy thing you can do, which is to kind of, but I was like, all right, everybody's into Batman. What's this Superman fellow up to? And like, I think it was at that point, it was at that point they were in the Triangle Superman for deep comic book nerds, where basically they had 3 Superman books coming out at the time, and they were all relating to each other, written by different writers. And that eventually evolved into the Death of Superman, which was the famous thing that came out of the Triangle Superman. They called it the Triangle because there was a triangle on each cover that told where in the third of the story you were at.
Right.
And so then I got very much into that sort of triangle. I collected all 3 of them, and then as Death of Superman happened, I totally flowed with it and bought every single issue I possibly could, and was bowled over by all that stuff. And then then I started digging into the back ends and getting the John Byrne stuff and the Kurt Swan stuff that I could afford. And then that just gripped me. So I was everyone was into Batman, I was into Superman. Again, ironic. I think I've written more Batman stories than anyone alive. It depends on how you count, but it's close.
And I was very similar to you, where I just always loved Superman, and personally growing up, I never connected emotionally to the Burton Batman movies. So I always felt, and this, like when I saw Batman Begins, that was the first moment where I was like, wait a sec, like this is what I've been missing. Like now I get it. And I went back and read Year One and Dark Knight Returns, and suddenly it all clicked for me. But there was a long period of time where I was just like, well, Superman's my favorite. And maybe I just, because everyone around me seems to love Batman so much, and Batman 89 and Batman Returns, and they were like, those movies are amazing. I was like, well, I didn't love them. Maybe I'm just like, I just don't get Batman. But I think for me, what attracted me so much to Superman was the lack of angst, was the feeling of like, there was a vibe with all the people who love Batman that they were kind of like, yeah, he's badass. And I loved that, Superman, I think Superman is a badass, but that's not necessarily my go-to adjective or descriptor for him. Sure. But I love that about him. I love that it was like, well, he's going to Batman's not going to stop to save a little girl's cat from a tree. Superman will. And I loved that. I was like, and as I got older and started to understand more, what it was is it's like the most powerful being on the planet cares enough to do that. And that was to me so interesting and so fascinating. And it made it really frustrating when people would, oh, Superman's so boring and da da da. I'm like, I don't know, like there's something really interesting to me about that. Like this guy who is so powerful and can do anything he wants, helping people. And that, every superhero kind of is known for like they help people, of course, but like Superman especially, his thing is he saves people. If you take that out of the equation, there's not really a Superman. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I was a huge Frank Miller fan as a kid. I love Dark Knight Returns. I love
Oh
Year One.
yeah.
I used to read Dark Knight Returns once a year and his Daredevil run once a year, just over and over again. And I love a good angsty superhero. And yeah,
No knock against them because I love all that stuff.
and I also felt like Miller was elevating superheroes, and he was doing like things with panels and things with words that were a little more poetic than your average superhero book. And that always with Superman, it was, especially growing up before a lot of the classic Superman stories were written. We hadn't had sort of, the Mark Wades and the Kurt Busieks and the Grant Morrisons who, if you look on a list of greatest Superman stories of all time, 90% of them are post 1995.
Yeah.
It's a little crazy. I mean, and don't get me wrong, you can go back and find fantastic Superman stories from everyone, from Jerry Siegel wrote some amazing ones in the 50s, and I love Carrie Bates did some amazing stuff in the 70s, and we can talk about John Byrne.
Yeah.
But those heights, sort of the heights that Batman had reached poetically, hadn't been reached. I didn't know that Alan Moore had done these sort of 3 classic issues, which I consider to be the best superhero comics of all time, because they weren't collected the way Miller's were. They were just
Right.
random stories in the comics. And that was one thing. Like, I was always drawn to Superman, but I was always felt like, I feel like they're not getting that thing that Batman is getting is getting the best of the best. Superman's not getting the best of the best. But in retrospect, I think the churn of it became its own sort of poetry. The idea that these people were in looking back, I'd rather read a bunch of those Triangle Superman comics than a bunch of the Batman comics where people are trying to be Frank Miller.
No, that makes sense. I think part of it is like Batman and Daredevil kind of opened themselves up to that sort of flawed humanity in a way that Superman doesn't. Superman can have his flaws and be human, but in a way you kind of want to keep him as that paragon in some ways.
But it's not the flaws I'm talking about. It's like when I read, I just read For All Seasons again, the Superman book. Like that's not about a flawed character. That's about a perfect character.
Yeah.
But the art and the words in that book are so beautiful, and are so precise, and they're so elevated. Like, that was the treatment that Superman was missing as I was a kid. Just
I gotcha.
that to me was different. People got to Batman with the classics faster than they got to Superman making classics. I mean, eventually they did, but at least in my view. Now, that's again, I'm being generalized here, and I feel like I'm throwing some of my favorite creators under the bus.
No.
So.
I'm with you. I agree with all of this because For All Seasons is my favorite. For the longest time, I used to say people would ask me, "What are your favorite Superman stories?" And they'd ask me for recommendations. What do I read if I want to be a Superman fan? For 20 years, I would say Birthright and For All Seasons. And then I'm not bullshitting you. I'm not saying this because I have you on the show. I read Up in the Sky and I was like, damn it, now I have to add a third one to this list. And I tell people, I'm like, Birthright, For All Seasons, Up in the Sky. And what's great about Up in the Sky is it's not an origin story, For All Seasons. And this, it's funny that now Birthright feels like a modern take, but that was the early 2000s.
Yeah,
so now you read it.
Now,
now it's 20 years. That's how I know I'm getting old, like I was in high school when I read it. And now I'm like, I can't recommend that as like, oh, it's the modern origin story. But I used to tell people like For All Seasons is kind of the classical take on the origin story. Birthright was a little bit more modern, kind of bringing it into the 21st century. But what was great about being able to add Up in the Sky to the list is like, it's not an origin story and you don't have to know anything about, I mean, you can't go through your life without knowing something about Superman, but literally it's like you cannot have to read a single Superman comic or any comic for that matter. And if you wanted to know who is Superman in a nutshell, up in the sky. I would hand that to them. So
Oh, that's very kind.
I know this took a turn into me just sucking up, but like
That's great. I love conversations turn.
that turned into people just saying like, "Oh, you're the best. I love you so much."
This never happens to me when I talk to my children. They never focus about.
It's not so bad. It's not so bad. But this is all to say, like, I'm with you. I think there is. I never thought of that before when you brought it up. The fact that a lot of those, and they're not deconstructions, but like you said, the elevation of the art form to meet the character's potential for Superman in particular really didn't come until like it was post Dark Knight Returns, it was post 89, and Batman really like caught hold of the zeitgeist in that time, and Superman kind of had to wait a little bit for his moment in the sun for people to really latch on to it.
There was again, Man of Steel was really good. And when I go back and look at like the Bronze Age, that's not my favorite age. Like I love the campiness of Clark as the reporter,
Yeah.
and the weird stuff and going off, and like this, the Kurt Swan art, which kind of evolves into George Perez art, is so beautiful and so clean and so pristine, with Murphy Anderson doing all these inks on it. In retrospect, I love that stuff, but it's hard to be like, what's the great 70s Superman story? There are some novels from that era that are good, like Blue Monday and those kind of things. But I think there are more. Just let me give you a graphic novel of what Superman is today than there were when I was a kid.
And it's a little bit easier to collect them too. Like you have omnibuses and paperback collections.
True.
It's easier to say to somebody, you've got to check out the Triangle era. Like you got to check out the Man of Steel miniseries. You got to check out John Byrne's. Right, all this stuff exists now, and you can also, like you can find it on your tablet. Like you can like find it at a library. You can there's so many more means to introduce people to these things that just literally have only popped up in the past 15 years. So there are a lot more means to celebrate some of those older stories and to look at them in a way where they are more collected than they were at the time. Because otherwise it was like, oh, the Triangle era is great if you can piece together all the different issues from your local comic store. If they happen to have the back issues. Now, like I'm reading through the Triangle era for the first time, like all the way through. I've read John Byrne's run for a while, but I was like, you know what? I wanted like, I used to like find John Byrne. I would like stop at that point, but then I'm like, I'm missing out on so much. Like I'd never read the Superman in Exile storyline, and like really when like Mike Carlin and Dan Jurgens and Jerry Ordway and Roger Stern, all those guys took over and like really like made it their own. John Byrne is incredible and the work he did is incredible, but sometimes I feel like in celebrating John Byrne, those guys get like short shrift. So it's been really fun, but like it's been so easy because I have this stuff right at my fingertips, and it's much easier to go through that. And I think in a way that makes it not only more accessible, but it's easier to appreciate now that you have the means to look at it and digest it in a way that is convenient. And that helps elevate it a lot, kind of to your point where it's like, all this stuff is amazing. It's just that For All Seasons was in a convenient collected edition where it was easy to find it at bookstores. I want to talk a little about you writing comics, how you started doing it professionally. So you grew up loving comics. And as I understand it, you kind of like, you'd interned at DC and Marvel for a little bit, and then
in college I interned at both DC and Marvel. Yeah,
got it. So, but then you ended up at the CIA. So, like,
well, who doesn't these days?
Right. I mean, that's what I'm planning to do. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I always tell people it's like the scratch in the record of my resume. I interned at DC and Marvel. I was a copy boy at Vertigo back in the day, and then I was Chris Claremont's assistant at Marvel. But I graduated from college in the early 2000s. And literally Bob Harris, who was head of Marvel Comics at the time, took me to the side and said, "Kid, comics are dead.
Right.
We're about to declare bankruptcy. This is not for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, bummer, Bob Harris." And
you seem like you seem like you would know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he was the guy who edited all those X-Men comics my friends read when I was a kid, and so. I went and got a job in DC where I met my wife and mother of my children, and then 9/11 happened, and I just like a million other people in the country wanted to do something to help, and the way I did it was I applied to be in the Central Intelligence Agency. I thought I'd be like one of those analysts. Everyone was like, for dot connectors was the thing at the time, and I was like, I'll connect dots. And then they did sort of the psychological assessment, everything. They're like, you're not a dot collector. You're like a frontline recruit, they call you a case officer or an operations officer. And so then they threw me into Iraq, and then I did some time on the Afghan-Pak border, and did a lot of sort of anti-9/11 stuff. And so I spent basically 8 years in the agency, and then when I had my first kid, I left and started writing a novel at night, and that sort of became my. And the novel got picked up by the Simon and Schuster and got published. It's called A Once Crowded Sky. It stars a Superman stand-in.
I gotta read this. Is this available? Can I read this?
Yes, yeah. Buy it on eBay for a penny. I get no money from it. Please. I think it's got a great premise. It's very cool. It's very meta. It got great reviews. I look at it now as like, oh, that's me learning how to write, because there's a lot of like is stuff now I cringe at. I was like, oh, I think I could have done that better. But then there's stuff like, oh, I'm really proud of it.
But like in the back of your mind, like obviously at some point, like there was a switch, and you were like, no, I want to be a writer. Like, what was the point where you decided
always wanted to be a writer? Always, since I was a little kid.
So what point did you decide? Like, was it the moment where you were like, I'm about to have a kid? Like, this is a major life change. Like, what was it that really made you decide? Like, I've got this like solid job at the CIA, but let me give this a shot.
I would be, I'd almost be a pension now, just because I started really, really young. I was 22 when I joined, which was the youngest. I was the second youngest person.
Oh wow!
In second youngest officer in the agency. It's complicated, but basically I grew up without a dad, and when I had my kid, I was a counterterrorism specialist. I was sort of a war zone specialist. And I'd spent a lot of time away from my wife in sort of the first years of our marriage, because I've been in these war zones. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time away from my kid once he was born. He's now 16. My God, we're talking about learning to drive. I'm so old. And I was turning 30. My God. And I was like, I want to try to do this thing that I always wanted to do with my whole life, which was to be a writer. Like, sort of have that sort of like, this was the life I always wanted, and I've sort of given it up for this other life. Give me a shot at it. It did help that I had no other skills. I was a college graduate, but I was like a history, philosophy major. The only skill I had is I could get one terrorist to spy on another terrorist. It wasn't like I could apply for another job with that. Right. There wasn't like a lot of openings for that.
Put
kind
that
of
on
stuff.
Your resume.
Yeah. And that was another thing. I couldn't build a resume because I was undercover. So like I had this fake job, which looked really boring, and I couldn't tell everybody actually this is what I did, because once you do that, then you're out for good. So I stayed undercover. I was like, I took a year of leave, and I took a year of leave to take care of my kid full time. I changed Charlie's diapers during the day, and I wrote at night. And I found in writing that I loved it so much. I loved the act of writing. I loved all of it. And then by the time a year had passed, I had an agent and a publisher, and I was like, okay, let's take the cover off and go.
Do it. That's awesome. And then at what point did you make your way back to comics?
I wrote the novel to get into comics. That's all I wanted. I always wanted to write comics since I was a little kid. That's what I want to do now. It's what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
Much to the chagrin of all my Hollywood agents. And I listened to a podcast in the beginning days of podcasts, like 2006. There's a word balloon podcast. John Sunter still goes to this day, and he interviewed comic creators, and he would interview them about their origin stories. And I just listened to their origin stories, being like, how do these people break in? Of course, in comics, every origin story is totally different,
right?
And I finally listened to Brad Meltzer, the writer, the novelist Brad Meltzer, and he was like, well, I was working in DC, and I had a job. He was a lawyer for the government, and at night I wrote a novel, and the novel got published. And then the comic companies found me, and that's how I broke in. And I was like, I'm just going to do exactly what Brad did.
And it works.
And it works.
But you have to live in DC. You have to live in DC.
I had to live in DC. Yes. I just did what Brad, and Brad's now a close friend, and I teased him about that. I was like, yeah, I just copied exactly.
Yeah. What was the first comic where you felt like, this is me? Like, this is my voice. This is maybe not exactly what, it's not perfect, but this is like as close to my voice as I've gotten, and I want to keep moving in this direction.
That's a good question. I started off, I mean, I mean, my first thing I wrote was a short story, which I still think is pretty good, with Tom Fowler on art, which was this sort of fun Hitler story. I mean, at the beginning, I was an Alan Moore clone. I just sort of I sort of studied all he did and tried to be him. But I mean, I think that it's got probably this thing probably has two answers. Number one, I did this Grayson issue. I was given an issue of it was like a crossover, and the crossover was like Grayson, who's for people knows was Nightwing, was temporarily a super spy named Grayson.
Mm.
And I was co-writing with the great Tim Seeley, and they're doing a crossover where called Future's End, I think, and it was so like 20 years in the future, everything sucks. Like give me a comic book about that was sort of our assignment, and it's gonna have a lenticular cover so people will buy it. And I'm always trying to like push boundaries and try to be sort of uncomfortable, kind of do things different with the medium. And I was like, what if I wrote it backwards? And I ripped off an old comic, an old Peter David who just passed away, old comic, a Star Trek comic he'd written, where he'd sort of written an origin story of Scotty, and he told it backwards. And so I wrote it backwards, and I put in like this secret code, and I just put a lot of layering in it. So every page meant like 6 different things, no matter which way you looked at it. And I was like, oh, this is kind of what I want to do. Like, I don't want to just write, like I said from the beginning, like I've always wanted to write those elevated comics. I always wanted to write Dark Knight Returns and Year One and Man of Steel. And so that was the first time I was like, oh, I'm writing. That wasn't just what Grayson was in the main book, which was kind of more of a sort of spy book. I was like, I'm doing something elevated. So that would be probably the first time. And then I think, fast forward a year, I got in a book called Vision.
That was how I discovered you. I don't even remember why I picked it up.
No one does.
Honestly, because like I remember seeing it, like being struck by the cover, and then like looking at the first couple pages and being like, oh, I'm buying this. Like, I'm buying this. And that doesn't always happen. Like, a lot of times I am like, where's the Superman comic? Where's the Batman? Where's Spider-Man? That was like, what is this? I don't know much about Vision. And just knowing instinctively, and like you said, like, yeah, I think I read it and recognized the Alan Moore-ness of it, and that was, I think, like but I recognized it as its own thing. I was like, this guy he wants to be Alan Moore, and it's working. It's working. It's I would have known very quickly if it wasn't working, and I was like, this guy's. I think he's gonna pull it off. But sorry to interrupt. Just again, buttering you up. Like, no, I love it. How it works.
It's wonderful. Vision made my career. Probably still makes my career to this day. And that book was just. I mean, it's like something out of a Steven Spielberg movie. I had been on a book called Omega Men that I was doing, very Alan Moore influence. I used to make a joke with my wife. It should be called "Who Omega is the Omega Men," because it was just like it was very Watchmen ripoff. I love that book, and I did it on the 9-panel grid, and right. I played with the panels and did all that thing, and I try to like up some of it. But that book was canceled after the 3rd issue, 3 issues and canceled. It's almost unthinkable today. And Grayson was also being canceled, not for sales. The sales were good, but just because of continuity stuff.
Right.
Oh, and I had this sort of gig from Marvel. Like I said, I grew up a Marvel zombie, so it was like my first gig from Marvel. And I was sitting there, and my wife and I were going on vacation or something like the next week with the kids. And I was like, oh, my comic career is over. Like, I took a swing and I missed. Like, I was one of the guys who got up to bat and just didn't have it. And I was like, well, fuck it. If it's over, I might as well just do whatever I want and just, be myself. And I wrote the Vision #1 script, 20 pages.
Was that a pitch, or did they come to you and say, do a Vision? Like,
they came to me, do a Vision. And I would have said yes to anything they said. They're like, Tom, we have the perfect comic for you. And I was like, oh, it's gonna, because I was on Grayson, because I was in the CIA and Grayson was a super spy. I was like, oh, this is definitely gonna be some spy thing,
right?
I had no doubt it was Winter Soldier. I was like, yeah, Winter Soldier. I get it. And they're like, Vision. I was like, Vision? And again, I grew up an Avengers fan, and even I didn't think, but of course I responded. I was like, Vision, he's my favorite character. I have such a vision for him. I've lied through my goddamn teeth.
That's how you make it in this industry.
Yes, and then I pitched it out. When you get a pitch, and you're really trying to get work from somebody, as I was really trying to get work from Marvel at the time. You're like, okay, I write anything you want. Like I just I have to feed my children, so whatever I can, just to become a professional writer, whatever. But you don't want to tell them that you're that desperate, so you have like this incredible negotiation to be like, so what are you looking for? Like if you just tell me what you want, I'll give it to you. But so I asked them that very vague question, like, we want sci-fi, and I was like, Vision sci-fi. It's like, okay, so then I was like, okay, so we'll do Doctor Who, but Vision, so like he's in space, and then they're like, oh yeah, but no space, like it has to be sci-fi. But and I'm like, so I threw out that pitch. Thank God, saved my career, right? That would have been a shitty, because also Dan Slott was doing the exact same thing with Silver Surfer, so it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
And I remember literally in the middle of the night being like, so it's sci-fi without space. What is an Eve then? I was like, that's like, was it like Frankenstein? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's sci-fi without space. So like, could I do that? Like Bride, I'm like you, I'm a movie buff, so it's like Bride of Frankenstein is known as like one of the great movies. And I was like, so I was like, oh, so okay, so Vision builds a wife. Okay, I could do that. That's kind of deep and weird. I was like, but that literally is Bride of Frankenstein, so that's kind of boring. So they'll see through my influence. And I was like, okay, he builds a family. I was like, okay, that's good. And then I went back to sleep. And then I woke up the next day. I was texting my friend Daryl, still a very good friend of mine, who's a huge comic book nerd. And I texted him. He's like, "Do you have an idea for Vision?" I was like, "Yeah. Vision builds a family." And he's like Small Wonder. That sounds so boring. And then I just responded to his text with, I had nothing besides.
No, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
And then I said, and it's Breaking Bad. It drives him insane. Like that was like, I just so he would stop laughing at me. I was
right. What's the most serious, best television show on right now?
So that's what I was like. Okay, yeah. So that's how my Vision pitch came from a Frankenstein morph, and then my buddy Daryl yelling at me and me saying, okay, it'll drive him insane. So
that's great. And then that launched it. That's because
I
remember
that launched my entire. So the Vision became a phenomenon. Marvel got very supportive of the book. Lots of people like you have no idea how they got it, because Marvel just marketed it and got inside people's brains saying this was good.
Yeah.
They put it in the back of a Deadpool issue, and a lot of people read it that way. And then and literally, like 7 months after Vision, I was writing the biggest book in comics, Batman, #1. So
I remember when I met you, I think at AwesomeCon in 2015, and they had just announced, because I literally found out there, I was like, oh, we gotta go see Tom King, he wrote Vision. And then I found out while I was there, they were like, oh, did you know Tom King's gonna be writing Batman? And I'm like, no, I didn't know he's gonna be writing. What's happening? It was great. That was the best day of my life. I'm sure it was all right for you too, but...
Yeah, no, same. Yeah. I'm glad we have that in common. I'm glad we put #1. Yeah.
So at what point did you get on Superman? Like what like I know the Superman stuff was kind of pitches, like, did they pitch it to you as like, these are just going to be these random issue Walmart comic books that we're going to, do you want to write a Superman story for this random?
I've been at DC now more than 10 years. So I've been 12 years or something. I'm the longest tenured writer who hasn't had a gap. I fight Josh Williamson. I fight about this because he was around for a little earlier than I am, but there's a gap where he wasn't in there. I'm the longest sort of I've been to all the summits.
Put that on the Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Even Scott, who's back now, he left for a while. I'm the stupid guy who's always there. And I am like Snape in Harry Potter, where I always want to. I always want to write Superman. Like, he always wants that defense against the dark arts.
Right.
And every year it's some new schmuck.
Right.
That's always me. Like, that's all I want to do is write Superman, and I never fucking get it. And I let them know. I was like, hey, I read it. Yeah, no, we'll give it to you. Nothing. Every time they tell me someone else.
Do you think they didn't believe you because what the stuff you were writing was very psychological and twisted in a way that maybe you don't necessarily associate with Superman? Like, do you think they thought you were putting them on for a little bit?
I mean, what is the history of? I mean, I can take you through every single moment of when at one point, this might be pre-Batman, I got called by an editor literally on Thanksgiving fucking Day. What a terrible editor. He's since left our industry. I won't name him, but he was not a good person. And he called me on Thanksgiving Day. Never call anyone on Thanksgiving Day unless it's like to wish them happy Thanksgiving. And he was like, Tom, I was, Vision, it was again phenomenal. Tom, we need a new Superman writer. Can you get me a pitch by Monday? And like, I'm with my family at my grandmother's house, and I'm just like, I can't think of anything. I just have to think of Superman pitches, all Superman pitches, Superman pitches.
So
And
you say that like that I agree. Nobody should be trying to make you do work on any holiday, especially not calling you and saying, "Hey, I need this by tomorrow." However, if I were to find myself in that situation, that would basically be a dream come true. Shawn, I need you to come up with a Superman story by Monday. I'd be like, "Thank you, God. How did I end up in this position? What a dream come true." Not
it was a dream come true.
But also it's a job, and you don't want anyone calling you on Thanksgiving.
But yeah, and so that I pitched it out, and I pitched something, and it was rejected. And I had pitched an earlier Superman pitch that was also rejected. It was not a good pitch, and so this is my second time. That became the depowered Superman who was at the very end of New 52. That
Right.
was what that became. That was the pitch
Okay.
they took, which my pitch was better. So they're
New 52 would still be going today. It would still be new today if they took that pitch.
So I missed it there, and then I had Batman. So no, I don't think they consider me for Superman for that. And then Bendis came in sort of halfway through, so he had it for a long time. And then I jumped off Batman. I didn't want to do monthly comics. Yeah, it's just circumstances. For 10 years I've missed it. Anyways, this is a long ass answer to your simple question.
I love it.
Very much apologize. I was on. This is how dumb my Superman love got. I had done for the Action 1000. I got to do my first Superman story I ever got to tell, which was with Clayman. Drew the crap out of it. That was the
first one?
That's the first one.
What,
there was another Superman story I did like 5 years earlier that got killed by editorial. It's just in a drawer. But that was the first one. It was a 5-pager. Me and Clayman and I did it, and Clay drew the crap out of it. It's one of the most beautiful stories I've ever worked on with Jordy on art. And then somebody put me on a panel with Dan Jurgens right after that, and it was the Superman panel at probably like I think New York Comic Con. It was me and Dan Jurgens on and Dan's going in. They were like, I have written 800 Superman issues.
Yeah, 5,000 Superman comics
including
yesterday.
The best-selling Superman comic of all time, which sold 4.4 million copies. And I'm like, I wrote a 5-page short once. And it was the dumbest panel I've ever done. And Dan Jurgens like, who the fuck is this guy? I still haven't answered your question. I'm terrible.
It's okay. No, you're good.
Halfway through Batman Runabout, Dan DiDio took me out to Dan DiDio was the editor-in-chief of DC Comics at the time. Took me out to lunch, and he said he wanted to launch these big Walmart books. We were going to be in Walmart, and it was going to be the biggest thing of all time, and we were going to sell 4.4 million copies of Walmart comic books. And he was wondering if I would help launch them by doing a Batman comic, because I was the Batman writer. And then Bendis, who was the Superman writer, would do the Superman comic. And at the time, I was writing double ship Batman, which meant I was writing so much Batman.
Yeah.
And I was like, can we flip it?
I beg you.
I was like, can we flip it? And he said yes. I very much remember, like, that was and out of that, Bendis wrote his Batman story, which I think is probably the best thing he did at DC.
Yeah.
And I wrote Up in the Sky, and it was just, and that's how it happened. That's all it was. And it was, and we did not sell 4.4 million. For people who know, the Walmart books sold less than 2,000, which is very, very, very low, very low.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I remember, I think I heard of it because you were tweeting about how, like, man, I'm writing a Superman story I'm really proud about, and I don't know if anyone's reading it.
Zero people, because they put them in these little bins in the back of the store. Nobody knew what they were.
I remember flagging that and being like, okay, Tom King's Superman. I'll have to read that someday.
And I had Andy Kubert on art, like just the perfect artist.
Yeah, it was interesting strategy, DC. What was the germ that kind of made that story for you? Because you said you had some pitches before that weren't quite working, and what was the idea that you were like, that's it, I got it, like this is the Superman story I want to tell?
I mean, at that point, I was just like, I don't know if they'll ever give me Superman. I'll ever be able to write this again. I mean, at the time it seemed like I've been there for so long, but like 4 or 5 years now. I've been there. And I was like, I want to do something where I can write every kind of Superman story ever. Like I just want to give me, I'm going to do some sort of framing device where I can do whatever. And the easiest framing device for any stories is what they call an Odyssey story, obviously after like, Homer's The Odyssey, where you just have a character that is on a mission that, he wants the thing at the end of the mission and he has to cross obstacles to get to that thing. And so I was like, I'm going to do a very simple Odyssey story. People knows me, I steal my plots from old movies. I went to an old movie that easy to steal from, The Searchers by John Ford, which is just a story about
when it comes to Superman, Supergirl story, you're just stealing from Westerns. Searchers, True Grit, that's just it.
I definitely, that was obviously where that came from. It's like I stole from one, let's do it again. And that was the impetus to create something where I could do these little one shots. And I decided because, I've done a lot of 8-pagers. I was really good at 8-pagers, which is kind of a short story in comics.
Yeah.
And the trick to an 8-pager, if anyone ever asks you if you ever get a shot at it, is to make every page its own story so that it feels bigger than it is. When you write a comic book, usually a scene is 3 to 4 pages. If you're doing a 5-page scene, it's a pretty long scene. If you're doing a 2-page scene, it's a pretty short scene. But in an 8-pager, make every page a scene. That way you're giving them 8 scenes, which is almost what a usual comic is. So it kind of surprises the reader that they got such a big story because they got 8 scenes instead of if you make it 3, if you do 3-page scenes, you're going to run out of room very quickly.
And wasn't that the way the Walmart books were formatted too? It was like you only had so much space and
yes. So I had 12 pages, which is 4 extra pages.
Right.
And so I decided to write them like I do a short story, where every single page would be a new scene, which was also just obviously I started out saying I wrote my first comic backwards, was the first one I liked, and I like breaking the format. I was like, well, can I do that? Can I do every page is a new scene for 12 issues, and therefore make it possible to tell very big stories in a very small space, and I did it and stuck with it, and so every page is a new scene except the last 2 pages, which break the rule.
At what point did you decide it's gonna be about is the good of the one, does it outweigh the good of the many? Like that story of this one little girl is going to become Superman's mission, that struggle of figuring out is it worth it? Is it was that pretty early on too, that coming into it, or was that something that you came to a little bit later in the development?
Yeah, I think that comes a little bit from starting off with The Searchers. That movie's complicated because you're following a character who's kind of nasty and racist, and horrible.
Yeah.
But what it does is the idea of that story is he's willing to give up his soul for this search, basically.
Right.
He's willing to give up everything in his life. That's what makes it sort of existentialist. That's what where your Camus and your Sartre come in, the idea that you put one goal above sort of every other goal.
And with this, it becomes the inverse, because for John Wayne and the Searchers, it's I'm going to find this girl, and you don't know if he's going to kill her or save her. You don't know what the ultimate goal is. Whereas Superman, there's no question.
That's not an option.
That's not even on the table.
So I'm less known for this now. Your reputation changes over the years. But in the beginning of my career, I was known as kind of the bummer, because I never put happy endings on my stories. I always put kind of, again, raised on Dark Knight Returns, raised on Watchmen, raised on Year One. Not exactly... Year One's different, but even Year One has sort of the twist of Gordon having the affair and everything.
Yeah, it's dark. Yeah,
and so I was kind of known as this guy who kind of would come in and twist a knife at the end of stories.
Right.
And I very much remember being at Baltimore Comic-Con. And I was 2/3 of the way through the story, and Dan, the chief, again coming up to me and putting his arm around me. It was 2 a.m, and we'd both been at the bar. And he's like, Tom, I want to tell you something. If you want to kill that little girl at the end of the story, it's okay with me. I was like, Dan, it's a super... She doesn't die. Oh my God. I was like, no, he's going to save her.
It's okay. Yeah, he's I know he's
I know that's where you're at.
You're I got this. I got this. It's going to be okay.
He's going to save her.
Do you have a particular part because it's like it's 6 issues. Or it became because it was the Walmart stuff, and then eventually got released as 6 issues. But each issue
Yes.
is made up of those parts.
Yeah.
Is there a part that you are particularly proud of? There's so much great stuff in there. Like I think we mentioned the long distance phone call trying to get in touch with Lois, waiting in the DMV, the alien DMV from hell. There's the boxing match. There's so much great stuff. Like you said, it plays as a greatest hits. I think it's why partly like it does feel like the Superman comic you could hand somebody and say like, "Hey, take this." But is there a particular part or sequence that you really really love that you're really proud of?
Oh yeah, the last issue, issue 12, where she's just asking him the questions,
It's so good.
is definitely the best issue of it to me. And because I look, my work doesn't usually affect me emotionally because I made it up. I was like,
Yeah.
this is a lie I fed you, and why would you even? And when I read it today and I get to that last panel, I do get a little like choked up, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. So if I can choke myself up,
Right. It's working.
then I'm yeah. No, I mean I like that. I like I recently read it and I was like, oh, this is all right.
It's nice. It's a
Yeah,
nice little like,
yeah,
maybe I
this
should keep
is
at this.
yeah, it was okay. I was talking earlier about the pitch, the Thanksgiving pitch. The Thanksgiving pitch was what, because at the time we did Action and Superman 2, I was like, what if Clark Kent and Superman were divided in half and one was one and one, and how that, and that I just threw that in as issue like 8 or something.
Yeah. You
And
took,
so
this little bite-sized version of
I
that
gave
story.
the bite-sized version of that story.
But
So,
it
yeah, no,
works. It
I
feels
like
great. It works. It works as a complete arc. It's emotionally fulfilling in that small space.
Yeah, I mean, I bought all the art for the boxing issue off of Andy, and I have it up in my office as a grid.
Oh,
You can see it back there, and so I look at every set. That's very sort of special to me, just because it sits in my office, and
I
look at
love
it all
that.
the time.
I mean, the last issue is great, but like I was the first time I read it, I think it was over COVID. Like I think I was like, oh, I should give this a shot. Yeah, this Tom King guy's all right. And I remember reading it and just being so completely engaged in it. But any great story that you end up loving and connecting with, feel like I can pinpoint a moment where it's like I was enjoying the film, I was enjoying the story, I was enjoying the book, but then
Sure.
there's that moment that where it's like, oh, this is gonna be an all timer for me. And for me, what it was in Up in the Sky is actually not the last issue. It's the story. It's the story right before it, where every obstacle, it's like the alien invasion is coming to Earth, the Armada is coming to Earth, and there's every obstacle being thrown in Superman's way, and every something is like you can't do we're going to destroy you, no sir, you are not, and just repeating it over and over. Every page ends with him, like somebody, the bad guy, saying I'm going to destroy you, and Superman responding, no sir, you're not. And then the punchline, quote unquote, is the little girl like, am I going home? And he says, yes ma'am, you are. And that got me. That was the moment emotionally that got me. And of course, like, it's like then you have the coda at the end, which almost was like an emotional epilogue for me.
Yeah,
That
that
was
is, yeah.
the moment, because I felt like that's Superman. He's unstoppable. But then at the very end, it's not about the action. It's not about because he's so powerful and is more powerful than a locomotive. He can do anything and he can destroy any obstacle. It's to save this little girl. And
Yeah.
I think all of that, I was just like, that to me is Superman. And then it's like at the end, just the beautiful moment of her telling him, the last panel, you're Superman. It was just like, that was the cherry on top. But for me personally, I remember reading that and thinking like, damn it. Like I said, now I have to tell people there are 3 Superman stories I love: Birthright, For All Seasons, and Up in the Sky. Rereading it most recently before, just to have it fresh in mind before I talk to you, I really loved the alien healer who sacrifices
Oh, yeah.
himself to save Superman. Because that is, again, like, just like, what is the greater good? Like, is the good of the one, does it outweigh my needs? Does it outweigh what, like, my family needs? And that, just like the sacrifice of, like, Superman is typically the one in that role, sacrificing himself to save whoever, and somebody else recognizes the value of being that person for him. But it's not, like talking about how your editor or your buddy Dan was granting you permission to go dark. That, to me, that moment is, I think, the typical quote unquote Tom King like ending, where it's like this character chooses to sacrifice himself and leaves a family behind for the greater good, but very, very beautifully. So I was just being struck by that, and really, really loving that issue.
I appreciate that. Yeah, people don't mention that one. I realized that was pretty. That was, I mean, that was supposed to be sort of a tribute to my like Star Trek roots. A very Star Trek kind of one shot story,
Yeah.
and very like and it's a very Alan. We keep bringing him up, but like there's different sort of versions. Like I did a Silver Agey story. That was like the Alan Moore story.
Mhm.
That's like a very kind of his thing. It's like a foreign culture looking at the character. And yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I like that issue too. And Andy Kubert drew the crap out of it. I mean,
Yeah.
every issue, and he does things. I'm a kind of guy. I love boxes. Obviously, I'm always on grids and stuff. And because I just think it's easy to tell a story that way, and
Right.
the artist's strengths can be really emphasized in a grid. But Andy is a genius. Obviously, his father was one of the founding fathers of comics, and he sort of was raised in this. And Andy doesn't work in the grid, so that kind of made me nervous at first. I was like, oh my god, but he's a genius storyteller. So he would I give him a 4-panel page. You give anyone else a 4-panel page, you'll see 4 equally horizontal panels. And Andy, I give him a 4-panel page, and he would be like, all right, 3 small boxes and a splash, and it would work. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. He always knew like which thing to sort of bring out to make it more epic and more cool. So I did get very lucky by having just the best art in the world on it.
Well, one of the great moments of my life was being the book has been out of print and impossible to find for what feels like
I know. Don't think I haven't complained about that.
I've complained about it. I'm glad somebody finally heard. I've been telling people for so long, like I've been wanting to get it for friends of mine who are Superman fans, for people who aren't Superman fans, and now this deluxe edition is out. It was just released last week? Like,
yeah, just came out. Has a new introduction by me. It's a little bigger. It's beautiful art. It's back in print. If you go into any comic book store, they're going to have a Superman stand with a movie coming out, and it'll be in that stand.
Oh, I know. So, I've already mapped out my plan to steal as many of those stands as possible. So is this live? Is this
if you get 2, I'll give you the FedEx.
Yeah, perfect. A little bit before we wrap up, you also, as far as like living a dream job, you got the chance to get a screenplay from James Gunn himself, and you were one of the first people, I think, who got to give notes and like really sort of take a look and be a part of that experience. And now, like, that was like 2-3 years ago, and now we're here. It's happening. It's the year of Superman, the summer of Superman.
It's so big. It's so awesome. It's absolutely mind blowing. I love how the marketing is as big as I would hoped it would be. It feels like when I was a kid and Jurassic Park came out, or Dark Knight, like where you're like, I'm going to Burger King and I'm getting Superman cups. Like it's like we're at that level now.
Yeah.
It's so big. This is how that I have very cynical high school children. And I always ask them, like, do your friends read comics? No, we have YouTube. What do we need comics for?
No, Dad, we have a live. Shut up.
That is like, and I was like, would they go see this movie? And I've been asking them, I was like, do you want to see like a superhero? They're like, no, DC Comics, nobody cares about that. My son came home today, he's like, all my friends want to see Superman.
Yes.
And I was like, yes, that's that Batman 89 moment. It's like we're back in it, and it's so wonderful to be back here.
We've not had it with Superman, and Superman has been my guy for years and years. The closest I've gotten to this was when Superman Returns came out in 2006, and this is on another level. It's the worst because I'm DC's target audience. They're like, what? How many things can we get somebody to buy? This guy's gonna buy everything. Let's come up with like a $50 trinket, and I'll buy it because I'm a sucker for all that stuff.
You can blast the toys, and people might just be like, not respond to it. But there really is a genuine, like, this seems to be a Superman moment. Like there was a Barbie moment 2 years ago. Like it's not just like they're throwing things out and it's so loud everyone has to listen to it. It's like they're throwing things out and they're getting echoes. Like people want this now, and I think that's beautiful and it's a tribute to James Gunn and Peter Safran, who sort of founded this thing, and them seeing this moment is coming and them capturing it. It's absolutely amazing.
Why do you think we need Superman right now?
I'm the wrong person to ask, because was there a time that I thought we didn't need Superman?
We always need Superman.
That implies that I'm not.
But I think
guy.
you're right. I think I've felt it this year and the past year. It's been like, but this is like, it's become. I don't think I realized how much until that first trailer came out. But I was like, oh, I'm not the only one who needs this. This could be like a really special movie for the world right now, like something we need. And I think Superman is the hero to do it. Like you said, people are really like, you feel the buzz, you feel the energy, like people are ready for this hero. Why Superman more than others?
I think it's two things at once, and they're not necessarily contradictory, and they're not necessarily happening at the same time. I mean, first, and I mean, this goes back to me as a kid. Superman is such an escape. Like there's something comfort. It's that feeling you get when it's Sunday and it's raining outside, and you just want to sit on a couch and read something, and you can feel the muscles and tension in your back leaving you because you're escaping into another world. Or maybe you do that on a beach or wherever. That just that one feeling where you're like, man, this was a. It's like when you hear the Cheers theme song playing, you're like, I want to go where everyone knows. Like it's just there's that.
I want to go where everybody knows my name.
There is that feeling of, and I think a lot of us now these days, there are so many stresses in the world, and every day in the news there's more stress, and just the idea that we can go someplace and escape all of that, and that Superman can give you that. I think he works better than Batman in that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this to demean the character. I think that's one of the best things you can do as a writer, is to be like, man, you had a hard fucking day. You were on your fucking plumbing job. You were on your Wall Street job. You were on whatever job it was. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes off. You sit on that fucking toilet and you live this life instead of.
Oh, it's got to be a toilet. Oh my
well,
God.
I'm not. I recognize that comics are perfect toilet reading. I'm not.
You know your audience.
I know my audience. No, I know. I write one flush fiction. So I think Superman is the perfect person to be like, dude, it's fucking July 7th, and I want to escape from the world and escape into something awesome. So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect is Superman represents hope. I mean, I don't know a better way to put it. There's a lot of just bad shit, in the world now, and I think the idea that, like I said in that quote, that you're going to follow a good man as he makes the good decisions, is appealing to a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I think it's funny that we've kind of flipped the script where it was, oh, Superman is such a good person that makes him so boring, to now it's like, Superman is such a good person, that's what makes him interesting.
Absolutely.
We've seen too many high profile examples of people with power not being good. It's more revolutionary now, I think, to see somebody with all the power in the world being a good person.
And Superman, he's not perfect. He's not a Boy Scout. He's not the best.
No.
He's none of those things. But he is good and decent. And I think good and decent can be compelling.
The best Superman stories reflect that, and I think Up in the Sky is one of those. So, what else would you, as far as like, if you could recommend? I'm stealing this from Brad and Lisa Gullickson. They've been asking everybody, and I think you've done a.
I did. I
answered them.
I have.
There was a DC video that was just released that was great, where you and a few others were talking about it. But I can't remember what you said. Is it Whatever Happened to the Man?
It's Whatever Happened to Man Tomorrow. Yeah, just to confirm. I think that's one of the best I think it is the best Superman story ever. I just recently reread it in the comics. I went back to the original coloring, and 100% holds up. It's amazing. It's a perfect Superman story.
It's great.
And has a very depressing ending. So I would
not too. There's a wink. There's a wink.
There's a wink. There's a wink.
So
yeah.
Not too bad.
Not too bad.
Well, Tom, this has been great. I really appreciate you hanging out and celebrating Superman with me.
My absolute pleasure.
I am such a huge fan, and I genuinely mean it when I say this is this is number one for me. Like, it's those three in the number one spot. So
And
thank
I'm
you so
genuine to
much.
say that means the absolute world to me. And I'll pass it on to Andy.